Okay, so I'm just going to start a file up inside of Premiere to do some color correcting. And if I can get it to work here. Next, I'm going to import that piece of footage that I just showed you. And of course, we can choose what we want.
The great thing about our counselors is that they take the extra time. No, that's not what it is.
All right. Is there any point where she's not messing up here? Let's see. Here.
I am the first one in my family to go to college, and Creo has provided me with a sense of family.
Okay, there we go. So we got a little piece of footage here. And we'll put it in the timeline. There we go. So the first thing you want to look at is sort of, there's different ways you can go about color correcting. There is an option under the workspace for a color. It's under Windows, Workspace, and it says color right there. So there is an option for color correcting to give you the tools kind of right off the bat. Again, it's under Windows, Workspace, Color. Some of the things it brings up is some of the color correcting tools that are available inside there. The main color corrector in there is this Lumimetric color, metric color, and it has different tools that you can use. And of course, my favorite is curves, right there, curves, favorite one there. To use this, you can actually put the color correcting tool. So this one is probably the one that has almost all the tools that you really need in there. To put it onto your footage, you go under the effects, and then under effects you can go to the and you can go to your color correcting, and then you can see the temperature here, right here. And then you have tint, just like you had in the camera raw, right? You have temperature, you have exposure, and contrast, and highlights, and shadow, whites, blacks, and HDR. I'm not sure what that is. You can reset back to default because I messed it all up. Again, it's right here under effects. That was under basic correct. Then creative, it has more color options, and so the two that add more color, I would say, is the vibrance and the saturation. The vibrance adds a little bit less, and so you can crank that up and it'll give a little bit more color in there without too much color. Okay, and you can use it to remove color as well, where the saturation is like really color. I really not sure the difference. Sharpen is good if you have, but if you do too much, it gets kind of blocky. Okay, so be very wary of the sharpen. Faded film just makes it look old. You also have a tint option here where you can adjust the color and a tilt balance. I'm not really sure how that works. I'm not really sure of that one. But of course, my favorite is curves. Inside curves, you can again add more blacks and whites. One thing about curves is you can adjust either the overall all red, green, and blue, or you can adjust just the red one if you want, or blue one, or green one, or blue one. So in this case, this footage, I'm going to zoom in here. Most likely she has a little bit too much red in there. And so if I was going to get rid of some of the red, I would pull it down, and you'll see that you can remove some of the red from there. See again, before, after, before, after, before, after, before, after. before, after. So again, I'm exaggerating a little bit here. Let me pull away some. So with curves, again, if you want mid-tones, it would be in the middle. If you want to remove the red from maybe the top, you could do that up here like this. If you want to remove red from the low tones or the darker tones, you can do this. So look how the red that was in her hair goes away there. So you can add more red if you want, remove red. So you have a lot of options in there. I like the curves a lot because it gives me a lot of control over each individual color. Or again, you can do overall. This I could give, if I wanted the whites to be whiter and the blacks to be blacker, I could give it an S curve as well for this one right here. And so I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you can see getting rid of some of the red in there was actually making that a lot better, I would say. And then, boy, they even have more color correcting down here. They have a color wheel. How the color wheel works is very similar to what I was just showing you, where you have a shadow, a highlight, and a midtone. And if you want to try and get rid of stuff, and let me go back to default here. So let me get rid of this curve. How do I get rid of it? Let's turn it off. Turn that off. Turn that off. Okay, so let's just work with the color wheel for right now. So with the color wheel, it's very similar in that you have your shadow, your midtone, and then you got your highlights. This here will give you more or less. This is like changing the amount. It'd be like in levels, I guess, a little bit. So if this would be like changing the triangle in levels, right? Remember in the levels in Photoshop and we were doing the triangle? You know, if you want to make the blacks blacker, you could go down with this and it's changing the dynamic range of where the shadow is. So you can see before and after, before and after, before and after. So not only can you adjust, and so if you want more detail to be pulled out of where the midtones are, you can go up. Then as well as you can change the color in those areas by clicking and adjusting the tint. And so if you want to get rid of the reds, you can go towards the opposite. So the best way to get rid of something, if something's like red in there and you want to get rid of it, you kind of go to the opposite direction. And so you can move it down. You can see we're getting rid of the red and she's getting more brown. So again, we adjusted the... And she's already looking better. She doesn't look like she's better. She's a little bit better already. Okay, so this one is quite useful because you can fine tune in the detail in there. Okay, and so she's already looking better.
So when you do that, it will affect the whole video.
Yeah, well, or you can use the razor blade and only do part of the video if you want. You can also you can do this without doing. Right now, I applied it to the entire video.
Right.
But if you do it through the effects window and you drag it on there, then you can actually do it with keyframes as well, where you can do it over time. So right now, since I did the color correcting and I just did that, it applied to the whole thing. But they also have a secondary one. Let me finish with this, where they have a secondary one as well, where you can use, you know, again, you got more hue and changing the range here. I don't really use this very much, this one. I'm not sure how this works. I don't see anything changing. I'm not really sure. I'd probably have to figure this one out. And then this one is more for, you know, edges. But if you did it, let's do it a different way. Hold on, let me drag this up. Okay, so since I did it using this window right here, it did the whole thing. But another way to do it would be to drag your clip again on. And instead of using this over here, if you go to the actual effects window here, and you take the color correcting tool that's under video effects, and you go to color correction, you have the same tool right here. If I take that tool and I drag it on top like that, like I would do a normal effect, right? Drag it on top, it'll then give me the ability to go to the effects controls. I can find effects controls now. Here they are. And you can actually keyframe those options so that you can do things over time. So again, I can actually, all of these can be keyframed, like the basic color correcting. You can go to temperature or exposure, and you can see you can go and adjust those over time. So maybe part of your video, this would be if you shot a video that was in maybe auto color mode, like that happens a lot, where the camera's in auto white balance, right? And you're shooting and the white balance is changing over time and you have to adjust the color over time. I don't know if you know what I mean by, but I shot a lot of video with auto white balance, and the color temperature adjusts over time. So you can do something like that. As you can see, she starts out like this, and then we could go here and we can have the temperature change over time, and then it could go back. So you can see right here it changes over time, right? So instead of just doing the whole clip, you can actually keyframe a lot of the features inside there. And they also have a WB white balance selector to select the white balance. You see that as well. So that's a pretty good start to doing color correcting. If we go to the canvas, I have a handout on there that talks a lot about color. So there is on Canvas, there is a little reading. So if we go to, hold on, it's logging in. If we go to here, we go to here, and we go down to color correcting. There's a lot of video that's shot kind of, but colorist tools, primary color correcting. Now this handout is for Final Cut Pro, but you can still, all the same concepts are inside of, all the same concepts are inside of Premiere as well. So basically, you can do all kinds of different options with the color correcting. Mostly the tonal ranges, balances of colors, and so on. Tonality rules or colored rules. The tonality of an image is basically expressed in a range of luminous levels from black to white, whereas they fall in relationship to one another. Again, luminous is the term we use to describe the brightness to darkness. The basic color correction tools have the ability to expand or compress your overall tonal range and adjust the balance of how the image is weighted. To do this, the color correcting engine basically remaps the levels of the incoming footage to new final output levels. The two main levels to remap are highlights and shadows. These define the limits of the tonal range of the image. And so another important element manipulating the tonal of the image is to decide where the center tones of the image will be remapped. This is called the gamma or midtone. Some programs or tools will offer basic controls over gamma, and others allow you to create complex gamma corrections, similar to parametric equalizer in audio instead of simple bass and treble controls. Right? Have you used audio controls? We'll do an audio class where we try and correct audio. You guys are going to shoot a bunch of video footage with bad audio. Right, Harvey? Harvey's pretty good at making bad audio. Yes. So let's talk about the gamma for a minute. So I use that one a lot, the gamma. So let me bring another piece of footage in there besides her. And let me find another piece of footage here. Let's try the fashion footage. Let's try some of this fashion footage. And, let me go back to my normal workspace. And let me delete this. And let's just look at one of these. This one. So let's look at this video for just a moment, okay? So if we look at it, it's quite flat. There's not a lot of dynamic range. The color's a little off for sure. This is not the normal color for this sewing machine, right? So this should be probably white, and right now it's kind of yellowish, if you can tell. It's kind of yellowish right there. And so there's a couple things you might want to consider underneath the a quick one that I would do. Let me get to effects. Where's effects? Why can't I see effects? There's effects here. Here we go. A good one, if it's shot a little dark and you want to brighten it up, again, would be to use the gamma. The gamma is located underneath the image control, I believe. Gamma correction right here. I use this one a lot on my footage. It's a very simple tool. It has a 10 here, and if you go down, it's going to make it darker. If you go up, it makes it lighter, I believe. Oh, no, up goes darker, down goes lighter. So, again, it's usually for midtones is the way that the handout is reading there. So, if you wanted to turn up a little bit to give you a little bit midtones, a little bit more contrast, you can see if I turn the gamma up, you can see I get a little bit more contrast, and it somewhat smooths it out, I guess, a little bit. I tend to use it to just brighten the overall or darken overall the footage itself. As far as for adjustment is concerned, they do have levels. It's right here. Just like you saw the levels inside of Photoshop, right? The levels in Photoshop, they do have one here. But if I drag that on there and I go here, it is not like Photoshop at all. It has all these different points here. You got RGB, black input, white input, black input, white input, gamma, and so on. I have yet to figure out how to make this work properly, to tell you the truth. I just couldn't get around how to, you know, I can adjust the settings, but I'm not sure what it's doing. What I want is the histogram that we get with the other one, right? I want to be able to sit here with my eyedropper and click right there to improve that, but I can't seem to get what I want. They do have the range here, though. You can see the problem with that as well right there, and this is the problem. So I have yet to make levels work inside of Premiere. I couldn't figure that out. So that really didn't work for me. The other one that works pretty well is they do have an RGB balance if you want color. This one's very simple. It has a scale right here. You want less red or more red, you can go down very easily or up. Okay, so this one's very simple. As you can see, simple color correcting balance is a very easy one to use. That's just the color balance RGB. You do have a black and white filter that will then again make it black and white. One of the problems though is it doesn't really give you any real controls over that. Color replace, we already just looked at gamma. Gamma is great for midtones. What I'd really like to do is the they also have a brightness contrast. They got a change color, change to color, channel mixer, color balance, like I was just showing you, and color balance HLS for hue, lightness, and saturation. This one's a very old one. Again, you have very simple tools here for that. Again, it's HLS. You got hue to adjust the color balance. So right now, There's too much yellow in there, and it's not really working for me there. They do have a lightness, and then saturation is the amount of color, as you can see. So they do have a simple HLS, but again, probably the most important one would be, oh, the tint is pretty good too. I've used this one before. If you click on tint, it gives you this kind of duotone look. You might have been in Jean's class before, and in Jean's class, she loves having you do a project with a duotone. So right now you'll notice if you put the tint onto your video footage, it gives it kind of looks like a black and white, right? But what you can do is you can actually add a color. And so you can actually add a blue in there, so you get like a blue hint, and then you can then go and even add a little brightness contrast to that, and you can get a really kind of interesting look, more of a duotone look. So I found that to be quite interesting. You can actually give a color for the highlights as well. So maybe you want a blue, and look at that. So that's quite interesting as far as that. What I really want though is this one is probably again the most dominant one is this. And again, it gives you the entire option. You got your creative collection. There's a white balance selector right here where you can use the eyedropper, and I can come over here and click on this, and it'll fix somewhat the video. So if we looked before, remember it was kind of, I don't know if you can really see because this is not very good. Let's turn on this light. Okay, here we go. Let me undo that for a moment, and let me undo. Here, let me delete it, and we'll start again. So again, if I drag this on here, and I go to the basic one, the basic correction right here. One of the problems with this video right now is that you have this yellowish tint on the sewing machine from the light, okay? And it's kind of in this area there. We want that to be kind of white, and you'll see your hands are kind of yellowish too. It's just because there's different color balances that are happening when this video was shot. So probably the best way is to use this white balance selector right here. And if you use the eyedropper right there, you can go over there and say, hey, I want this to be white. And so let me zoom in a little bit here. Oh, I guess I can't. I can click on that, and then let me zoom in so we can see. Oh, hold on. Let me do it again. Let me do it again. Zoom in. There we go. Let me do it again. Okay, again, if we look there, you'll notice it's kind of yellowish inside this area here. So this white balance selector with the little eyedropper right there, if you click on it, it'll come over here, and if you click on that, it'll analyze that and try and make that white. And you can see what it's done is it changes the temperature automatically for you, so you don't have to try and mess with that, and it changes tint, and it'll make the adjustment for you. I find that to be the most easiest because it's doing the calculations for you than you having to. It's almost like in levels, when I'm using levels inside of Photoshop, I can use the eyedropper in there as well, and you'll see that this video most likely has a much better color balance now inside there. So let's zoom out a little bit here, and most likely has a little bit more balance. I probably would also add some highlight to the shadows. Maybe pump the white up a little bit. Maybe add a little contrast, and so on. So, and maybe even make the exposure a little higher. So again, we can see before, after, before, after, before, after, before, after. Even this little light that's right here is now gray, where in the previous one it's kind of dull greenish gray. So that's probably the best one right there, this color corrector right there. Again, let's get back to the reading here. wherever my reading was. Here we go. So again, the gamma is a great one for midtone. Some programs or tools will offer very basic controls over gamma. Others allow you to create complex gamma corrections similar to the parametric EQ and audio instead of simple baseline. The advanced tools allow you to determine multiple gamma range and determine the slopes of each gamma curve and how they blend into and out of one another. Before too deeply into gamma, let's take a look at manipulating the extremes of a tonal range. These corrections are very standard. At their root, they are basic controls that editors have almost always had with the time-based correctors or TBC controls of gain and setup. One of the first things you will want to manipulate when doing a correction is to set the upper and lower limits of your image. To turn this into a highly generalized statement, you will want your blacks to be black and your whites to be white without violating the legal limits. To simplify the discussion, we'll set up these limits to 100 IRE on a waveform monitor for the top and 0 IRE for the bottom. Okay, so there's also ways of doing color correcting with the waveform monitor, and we're going to jump down there. We'll just jump down to the waveform right here. So again, what you see here is something called a waveform monitor. What it's doing is it's showing you the tonal ranges of your video footage. And so if I was inside of Premiere right now, and I've already messed this up, so I'm going to delete this, and let's start over. Let's start over. Here we go. We'll put it back in there. So I want to look at the tonal range of this video, and if you go under Windows, they used to have a waveform monitor in there somewhere. Reference monitor, source monitor, time code. They probably got rid of it, didn't they? Hold on. And they keep changing things on me. They used to have a waveform monitor inside of Premiere. It's in the color tab. Where? Oh, here. This one? What's that? Oh, there we go. So this is giving us a scope of all the color ranges. And again, you can see it's given us all the different colors. 255, it's being clipped a little bit here. You'll notice that some parts it's showing you. So you'll notice it's going above the range. That's probably right here where this white is right here, right? So this is being blown out, and the blacks down here are kind of black. And it's showing you basic controls here. So you have the ability to adjust with this vignette here where the range tonal. Oh, that's the edges. Where's the midpoint? No, that's just the middle. I do like that though. It's kind of cool. I guess we could do curves. So again, you can see where you can bring the blacks down to black. And so let's read. Again, you'll notice that in this example, the black is a little bit too high and they wanted to bring it down. The 7.5 right here is kind of like the where blacks should be right here. They have this 7.5. In this waveform, they have this 7.5 and then they have 100 right there. And so by bringing the blacks down below that 7.5, you're getting blacks to be blacker, I guess I could say. I guess you could call it like that. And so the first thing you should adjust in any correction is the black level. One of the primary tools for setting luminous or black levels is the waveform monitor. The specific position of the deepest black or the brightest white is not as important as watching how compressed the waveform is at the top and bottom. If you lower the setup to get it down to 0, but notice that the lower levels of the waveform are starting to compress into a single thick line at the bottom, you'll know you're losing detail down in the shadow. Sometimes this means compromise. Usually you want that black point to be all the way to 0 IRE, but if you want to start compressing the shadow detail before you reach the IRE, then you may need to use your eye to tell you when the blacks are rich enough. You can also bring the blacks all the way down to 0 IRE, and then use your gamma control to crush the detail in the shadow by lifting the gamma. So the clue that you are clipping or crushing is not really the position of the waveform, but the overall shape of the waveform. So again, you want a nice tonal range here. I kind of like using the curves. You can see there. You can just see how the waveform is blowing the whites out now. See how it's all at the top, and then if we bring it down, and then so bringing it down so the blacks are blacker. That's basically what it's saying there. Let me zoom in here. Be nice if I could see some ranges here. Okay, here's the detail in her in this shirt right here, and you'll see there's not much detail in there. There's a little bit, and you see if I bring the blacks up, you know, it starts bringing the detail out in here, but of course it's messing up the image itself. So the idea is that I'm trying to get black in here, but I don't want to lose too much detail. And you want the whites to be nice and bright, but not losing too much detail as well. That's a little bit better. And we still have the color problem, but oh, I turned it off. So that one is a basic one. I still like the basic color corrector with the eyedropper and use that one. That one tends to work the best. I really like that a lot, at least for the temperature and tint. And then, of course, you can go to exposure. You can notice the exposure and how it adjusts your waveform. You can see it as well. And same with contrast. You can see the contrast will expand the waveform. This compresses it. Highlight as well. You can see it go highlight. And then the shadow as well. You can see how the shadow brings the blacks down. Whites bring the white up. Blacks. Oh, look, this is where blacks are getting lost. See how the black line right there now is going way below 0. Or we can reset. There we go. Back to normal. So what do you guys think about some of these tools? Have you ever tried some of them?
I haven't, no.
So,
I've never used Photoshop before either, so.
what's that?
I haven't really ever used Photoshop before either, so.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's
you know,
it's
just learning how to correct. You're gonna shoot video that has all kinds of different colors. I've been shooting video mostly because your camera is not set to white balance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest problem you have. And there is a lot of new tools now that you can do just plain white balance adjustments. Premiere doesn't really have that as much as I would like. It'd be nice if there was, you know, oh, you shot this at, you know, 5,000 degree Kelvin when it really should have been at 3,600 degree Kelvin. Just boom, apply this filter, and it should, you know, do that like Photoshop does. So another good one to try if you want to practice again is this one with this student here, and you know, she has this kind of tint. You can see her blacks are not quite black enough, and there's a lot of white because the background is white. I would probably use the eyedropper here and click there. You'll see it just a slight adjustment there, but I would bring probably the shadow down, bring some detail out, and then again her contrast is a little bit red, so I might actually go and you know, what was it under creative? Where was the color one at? Oh, curves. You know, a simple way to get rid of the red that's inside her is just to go to the red curve and bring that down just a hair, a little bit. Something like that. And you can just get rid of that red. I'm exaggerating a little bit. And then I would probably lift her up a little bit to make her a little brighter and maybe add a little bit of darkness to her. Just giving her some contrast. She does have a lot of shine on her face right here because of the lighting. That kind of distracting. Mm-hmm.
I'm the first one in my family to go to college, and Trio has provided me with a sense of family. I'm the first one in my family to go to college, and Trio has provided me with a sense.
And so this video is a little, you know, I don't know. I tried to set the white balance before I shot it. It was just, you know, her clothes were kind of, she had this red shirt on. I don't know. It was just seemed red. Don't know. Okay, let's look at the rest of the handout here. So again, adjusting the blacks is probably a great way to go. Throw caution to the wind. The more a person grades film, the more quickly they can recognize the perfect exposure of film. That process can take 5 minutes. It can take 15 minutes. It starts by longer than 15 minutes. You'll lose your audience. Make the moves bold. Back to black. Again, they talk about black. Whites would be the 100 value. And again, the gain is probably the best way to go about that. Then here's the math. They talk about math, and that's it. So again, you have a scope that can help you. These are the tools inside of Final Cut, and this is probably an older version of Final Cut. I'm not sure. But there's a variety of other applications out there and so on. So we can move on if you want. I would recommend trying some of the tools and see what they do before you go through. I don't know. Let me